You've been listening to the podcast, The New Author, Uncle MeShorn, I'm Not Your Black, from Louisville, Kentucky. This conversation, the family. You're my family.
My name is Emmanuel Ossok. I am originally from Cameroon, which is the West Africa, technically. And I am an educator in psychology, and currently I am working as an engineer at Ford Motor Company. I am a Christian and I am a child of God, and I believe strongly in the power of God in my life. The book it's great. It's a great read because it does take you to such a kind of roller coaster of emotion and also intelligence, and at the same time it raises questions that ultimately need to create answers. Overall, I'm on the second read now. It means that I enjoyed the first time, even I glanced a little bit faster. The second read, it's for me to try to comprehend his ideology and where he's trying to lead me as the reader. Every chapter was really impactful, but the one I will emphasize here and hold on to it is the chapter on page 204, Moving Forward. That title, Moving Forward. And to me, that chapter is, and it literally remind me to, regardless of the narrative of the story that I told myself or the event that I have been through, always moving forward. So there is this great quote that he says, actually it's a Chinese quote that said, with the first one. And I believe that too. I believe that regardless of the event of the past, all one has is to look toward the future and keep moving. You stumble, you dust yourself, and you keep moving forward.
Indeed. So, if you would like to read a part of that chapter, and then you could give your feedback on it.
Okay. Yes.
Sure.
Okay. It started with a very great quote by Roy T. Bennett. What is done? What's gone is gone. One of life's lesson is always moving on. It is okay to look back to see how far you have come, but keep moving forward. That is by Roy T. Bennett. I expect that when the wise man set off in the search for the Messiah, there will have been moments of self-doubt, of hardship, of obstacles in their path. I imagine they would have stood in the sweltering sun and felt that moment of utter desolation. And yet, that moment never deterred them. In fact, it made their resolve stronger, and despite that little voice telling them to give up and go home, they knew there was no return. All they could do was to keep moving forward. When one sees the shambles of America, it is natural to desire a solution. It is natural to desire a conclusion to this chaos, an end to the violence and sensual depravities. But this end cannot be achieved through myths. It cannot be achieved through a promise of return. It cannot be achieved through gracious backtracking. The families that have suffered from neglect, distance, abuse, abandonment, poverty, sickness, and a host of depravities cannot simply be remade in an ideal image. Time cannot turn back, and the yes of the universe does not run the other way around. Instead, we must all continue to live in the shadow of a past that looms ever larger, eternally looking down upon us, but we must not look back. Our eyes must be fixed forward upon the elusive horizon of the future. I will never regain the innocence I lost in my youth. Children who have been abused will never be able to undo the damage. Mankind will never return to the state it fell from. And yet, we can ensure that the future is saved by our sacrifice. It falls upon people like me and you to protect the innocence of children, to ensure that the horrors in our past are never repeated. We must ensure that our trauma does not afflict our families, that we do not pass the curse over to our children and youth. Pattern of generational trauma must be broken, or we run the risk of losing another generation from the same abyss that we have barely managed to crawl out of. Sure, the damage is done for now to our society, but we can rebuild. We can sow the seeds for a better future, and man reaps to his souls. If today we sow the seeds of an ideal family, create an enduring belief and faith in value that will be beneficial to America in the long run, eventually the yield of our effort will bloom in earnest. Eventually, we will be able to create a precedent whereupon the successive generations will have their beliefs upon which the reformers of tomorrow will act. This chapter moving forward was so impactful to me. It is important to always look back to your past to reflect on where you are. And that's what Mr. MeShorn Daniels remind us, to not just get rid of your past, but always go back and look at it and reflect on where and on how far you have come. And also never dwell on it. Keep moving forward, because you always have to remind yourself there's a brighter future. It's upon us, you and I, to fix whatever needs to be fixed so the trauma doesn't continue. The trauma ends with the individual. The trauma ends with us. The trauma ends with me. There is this belief that I have saying that in the religion I practice, we have this motto that's saying that the peace starts with me. So if I'm at peace, I will continue to move forward peacefully, regardless of the past or of the event of my past. Very important. And also it touched a little bit upon to how the children, we're supposed to take care of the future, and that's very important. As an activist, it is important to care for and safeguard your identity, and also to pass on to the next generation, because if you have nothing to pass on to the next generation, they will have nothing to stand on. And it's very important that you always believe, educate the future generation so they can stand on something stronger. Like he said, as a reformer, it's something strong to believe that you'll have something impactful to do and to educate and to leave behind. And I think that's what MeShorn, Mr. Daniel, is trying to put his own rock on the mountain of rock that we all have to do, and we all have to contribute. So, yeah, moving forward for me was that passage that also I have to read that a couple times because I always have to remind myself the past will always going to remain the past. So it will never come back. It is my responsibility to reform whatever had happened and to fix that and continue to move forward. The journey of many miles begin with the first step. That's all I got to do. Keep moving forward, keep moving forward. And that is the construct of the individual. Keep moving forward because it is a journey. This journey that I am today, it's because the Almighty wants something greater and bigger for me. Yeah, that's why I'm a child of God.
You've been listening to the podcast, The New Author, Uncle MeShorn, I'm Not Your Black, from Louisville, Kentucky. This conversation, the family, you're my family.